The sun beat down mercilessly. The land of Israel was parched and barren. Crops withered and died. Animals grew gaunt, their ribs visible beneath their hides. The rivers slowed to a trickle, then vanished altogether. The air was thick with dust and despair. The Israelites, once a proud and prosperous people, were brought low by a devastating drought. Into this parched and desperate world, the prophet Elijah emerged. A figure of fierce conviction and unwavering faith, he carried a message from God. The message was stark. There would be no rain, no dew, until the people turned from their idolatry and returned to the one true God. Ahab, the king of Israel, had abandoned the worship of Yahweh, embracing instead the Canaanite god Baal. Elijah's prophecy was a challenge, a stark warning of the consequences of their apostasy. The drought tightened its grip. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The sun continued its relentless assault, baking the land dry. The people suffered. Their pleas for rain went unanswered. Their cries for mercy seemed to vanish into the oppressive silence. Ahab, enraged by the unfolding calamity, blamed Elijah, the messenger of God. He swore vengeance, determined to silence the prophet who dared to challenge his authority and his gods. But Elijah, protected by the hand of God, vanished into the wilderness, a testament to the unwavering power of faith in the face of adversity. Deep in the wilderness, far from the reach of Ahab, Elijah found refuge by the brook Cherith. Here, God provided for him in extraordinary ways. Ravens, those black-winged scavengers, became his unlikely providers. Twice a day they arrived, their beaks laden with bread and meat, sustaining the prophet in his exile. He drank from the brook, his thirst quenched by its cool, clear water. Even in the harshest of environments, God's care for his faithful servant was evident. But the drought was relentless. The brook, once a lifeline in the wilderness, dwindled day by day. Soon only dry stones remained where life-giving water had flowed. Once more, God spoke to Elijah, guiding him to a new haven, a city called Zarephath. There he encountered a widow, a woman on the brink of despair. Famine had gripped the city. She was preparing a last meager meal for herself and her son, resigned to their fate. Elijah, moved by her plight, asked for her hospitality. He promised in the name of the Lord that her jar of flour would not be depleted, nor her jug of oil run dry. The widow, her heart torn between despair and a glimmer of hope, chose to believe. She shared her last morsel with the prophet, an act of extraordinary faith in the face of starvation. And just as Elijah had promised, the flour and oil miraculously replenished, sustaining them through the famine. But their trials were not over. Tragedy struck when the widow's son fell ill and died. Grief overwhelmed her. In her anguish, she questioned Elijah, blaming his presence for her misfortune. Elijah, his own heart heavy with sorrow, took the boy into his arms. He cried out to God, pleading for his life. And God, in his infinite mercy, answered. The boy's breath returned. Life flowed back into his limbs. Elijah returned the boy, alive and well, to his overjoyed mother. In the midst of deprivation and death, God's power had been revealed, a testament to his unwavering compassion and love. 3 long years, the drought held Israel in its grip. Finally, the Lord spoke to Elijah, commanding him to confront Ahab. He was to challenge the prophets of Baal to a contest on Mount Carmel. This would be a showdown, a decisive battle between Yahweh, the God of Israel, and Baal, the false god embraced by Ahab and his queen, the ruthless Jezebel. The day arrived. The people gathered on the slopes of Mount Carmel, their faces etched with anxiety and anticipation. Elijah, a solitary figure clad in rough-spun garments, stood before them. He challenged the prophets of Baal to call down fire from heaven to consume their sacrifice. All day they danced and chanted, their voices hoarse with desperation, but their pleas went unanswered. Baal, the supposed god of storms and fertility, remained silent. As the sun began to set, Elijah called upon the people. He repaired the altar of the Lord, long neglected and forgotten. He laid out the sacrifice, drenching it with water, making the task seemingly impossible. Then he raised his hands to heaven and prayed. A hush fell over the crowd as they watched, their breath held captive in their chests. Suddenly the heavens opened. Fire descended from the sky, a blazing inferno that consumed the sacrifice, the altar, even the stones and the dust. The people cried out in awe and terror. They fell to their knees, their faces pressed against the ground. "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" they cried in unison. Elijah, his eyes blazing with the fire of the Lord, seized the moment. He ordered the people to seize the prophets of Baal. They were taken to the Kishon Valley and executed there, their blood mingling with the waters of the brook. The air, thick with the smell of smoke and sacrifice, crackled with the palpable presence of the divine. Elijah's triumph was short-lived. Jezebel, enraged by the death of her prophets, swore to kill him. Fearing for his life, Elijah fled into the wilderness once more. He journeyed to Mount Horeb, the mountain where God had appeared to Moses. He sought solace in the solitude, his spirit weary from the constant battle against idolatry and unbelief. In a cave on the mountainside, the Lord appeared to Elijah. He spoke to him not in the thunder and earthquake, but in a still, small voice. He comforted his prophet, assuring him that he was not alone. He instructed Elijah to anoint Elisha, a simple farmer, as his successor. Elijah found Elisha plowing his field, a symbol of his humble origins. He cast his mantle, a symbol of his prophetic authority, upon Elisha. Elisha, his heart stirred by a divine calling, left his old life behind and followed Elijah. The time came for Elijah to depart this world. He knew his earthly mission was complete. As he walked with Elisha, a chariot of fire descended from heaven, drawn by horses of fire. It separated the two prophets, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha watched in awe and wonder as his master was taken from him. He picked up Elijah's fallen mantle, a tangible reminder of the legacy he was now tasked with carrying forward. The spirit of Elijah, the fiery prophet who challenged kings and called down fire from heaven, would continue to burn brightly through his successor, Elisha. The battle for the hearts and minds of the Israelites would continue, but the legacy of faith and courage embodied by Elijah would endure.